Hey guys, so June 21st has been celebrated worldwide as International Yoga Day. From school children to senior citizens, housewives to hipsters, yoga went from being an obscure or minimally practiced form of exercise to a mainstream trend. With its rising popularity, one question that just keeps coming up is, should Catholics practice yoga? But before we get into the details, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of our videos. Okay, so should Catholics practice yoga? Some claim that yoga is harmful while others say it is just stretching and has nothing to do with religion. To answer this question, let's first look at what yoga is. The word yoga is derived from the Sanskrit root yuj, means to join or to yoke or to unite. The Isha Foundation says the word yoga literally means union and refers to an inner state where one experiences everything as a part of oneself. Often mistaken for a system of physical exercise, the yogic system is actually a set of tools for self-transformation that are designed to bring one to this state of union. So, according to the experts, yoga isn't just stretching. It is a spiritual practice that uses physical postures and movements as the means to join or yoke yourself to a higher consciousness. The word yoke implies service or servitude towards something. In the Bible, Jesus says in Matthew chapter 11 verse 28 to 30, "Take my yoke upon you." So in yoga, what or who are we yoking ourselves to? Here is what Nithyananda said about the goal of yoga.
The various steps are used in yoga ultimately to awaken your Kundalini Shakti. Yoga is not meant just for your well-being or health. It is meant to awaken your mystical powers. It is meant to awaken your spiritual realization. Realizing your spiritual identity is the ultimate goal of yoga.
The various steps, which I guess he means using chants, poses, music and breathing exercises, are used to awaken your Kundalini Shakti. It is not just for your well-being or health, but to awaken your mystical powers. See how Sadhguru talks about this same Kundalini Yoga.
Kundalini Yoga in its essence is the most dangerous form of yoga. I'm saying dangerous because it's the most potent also. What is most potent is always the most dangerous if improperly handled. Without the necessary preparation and guidance, without expert guidance, constant guidance and observation, nobody should ever attempt it. But the problem is, books have been written about it and everybody wants to do the highest yoga. Nobody wants to start with A, everybody wants to start the alphabet with Z. This attitude itself is dangerous. Kundalini Yoga, if it has to be practiced, you must be in a certain kind of atmosphere. You cannot live in social situations and do Kundalini Yoga. Otherwise, in the name of Kundalini Yoga, you're doing something simplistic. Otherwise, Kundalini Yoga can transform the way you are within days. Suddenly you find you are a stranger in your own home within 2 days of practice, because it will change everything about you.
Dangerous? Have you ever heard of pilots or stunt training or swimming being described as dangerous? Sure, they ask you to do exercises with the help of an instructor to make sure you don't hurt yourself, but they aren't ever described as dangerous. Also, he says that it can transform the way you are within days, that you become a stranger in your own home within 2 days of practicing it. What does that mean? Does this awakening make you go into some kind of trance, or does it affect you mentally and physically? But yoga is just movement or a form of exercise, right? If you eliminate the chanting and the music, it's just stretching, right? I mean, you can't label a posture or movement as Catholic or non-Catholic. You could naturally stretch your back and move your arms, and without realizing it, you are performing some asana or yoga position. Does that mean that specific movement is inherently bad? Of course not. However, it's important to remember that context plays a huge role in determining whether something could potentially lead to sin. For example, in 1 Corinthians 8, St. Paul is asked if it's okay to eat meat offered to idols. He replies by saying in verses 4 and 8, "Hence, as to the eating of food offered to idols, we know that an idol has no real existence and that there is no God but one. Food will not commend us to God. We are no worse off if we do not eat and no better off if we do." He says that even though we know there is only one true God and that the food offered to the false idols are harmless because the idols hold no power, we need to look at the entire context. It's not as simple as can we eat this or that. Just as meat from a pagan temple is no different from any other meat in terms of its spiritual significance, the physical postures of yoga don't have inherent spiritual power. But the consumption of food offered to idols and the practice of yoga take place within social settings. While you can do the physical movements in a non-spiritual manner, it is often very difficult to separate the exercises from the meditative and spiritual aspects of yoga. For example, a frequently used yoga mantra, Soham, which means I am the universal self, goes against the Catholic teaching to focus on God. During Christian meditation, the focus is on God, not on ourself or nothingness or the universe. The goal of Christian meditation is to grow closer to God. Pope Benedict XVI said, Christian prayer avoids impersonal techniques or self-centered concentration as these can lead to a spiritual individualism that hinders the person's ability to freely open up to the transcendent God. Or take the physical poses themselves. One of the most common yoga poses is the warrior pose. This pose is named after Veerabhadra, a mythical figure in Hinduism depicted as a three-eyed, thousand-armed warrior adorned with a garland of skulls. According to legend, Veerabhadra was created by the Hindu god Shiva to avenge the death of Shiva's wife, who had taken her own life due to the actions of Shiva's father-in-law. In the process, Veerabhadra goes on a violent rampage, killing everyone, including some other gods. The series of movements in the warrior pose symbolically recreate Veerabhadra's actions. But you could say that if you are unaware of all these backstories, the poses are just still stretching, right? If it didn't intend to invoke or embody some Hindu god, then it's just a physical action. Well, Saint Thomas Aquinas would disagree. In Summa Theologia, he states, actions have their own nature. The quality of the external act is derived from rational inquiry rather than from the intent of the actor. Similarly, the Catechism teaches that for an act to be good, it has to have a good moral object which is intrinsic to its nature and independent of intent. A good intention does not make behavior that is intrinsically disordered good or just. So, what is the intention behind yoga? To yoke yourself to Hindu deities through poses that revere and pay respect to them. The Catholic teaching on idolatry is clear. It is a violation of the first commandment, "You shall have no other gods before me." Here's an exorcist talking about this.
With regard to yoga, that should not be practiced because yoga, by definition, the bodily positions and postures are an act of worship of Hindu gods. First and foremost, the Kundalini spirit, which is a serpent spirit within Hinduism, which they believe lives in the spine. Yoga itself is a practice to channel the energy of the Kundalini spirit. That should not be practiced by Christians. It's incompatible with Christianity. If you want to do stretches that have nothing to do with yoga or its postures.
Whether we accept it or not, there is a deeper spiritual reality beyond what is perceptible in the physical world. Take the Eucharist for example. Non-Catholics are discouraged from partaking in the Eucharist due to their lack of belief in the real presence of Christ. They might view it simply as bread, but Catholics know that such an understanding would deny the spiritual reality of the body and blood of Christ present in the Eucharist. Similarly, the spiritual impact and the reality of yoga cannot be separated from its physical aspects, regardless of one's intentions. And it's not just us. Many exorcists have spoken about this as well. So, what do you think about this? Should Catholics do yoga? Let us know in the comments below. Also, if you like this new format, please let us know by liking and subscribing to our channel. Until next time.